Hi, Dan Paulson here. Let's get into tablet 2 of the interpretation of the Babylonian creation myth. But before we do, as we're working on this, I'm reverse engineering it. And the more I understand it, the more I find like what I assume the source of how this comes about would be. And it helps me to understand it. And I think if I convey that it will be helpful. A way to imagine what they're doing and what is going on. And you've been with me so far on this. I hope you're hanging out with me. We see it's complicated. It's like, what? This is still crazy. What? I'm not quite sure what's going on here. And I think I've found a way to explain that, to describe it better. It makes more sense to me this way. Okay, so we've got that healing template. We start out in life. We are brand new. We haven't been programmed yet. That as life goes on, we pick up characteristics. We're unaware of that we grow up. At some point in time later in life, we might get to a point where we think, oh my gosh, I've got to change my life. I don't feel good. I've been hurt. I've hurt people. I need to make restitution. I've got to figure out how to feel better about my life. It's not okay. I'm mortal. What am I going to do? And what happens at that point is this material picks up and it teaches us that is what has happened to us, that's how we came about, and that what we must now do is go in, we have built up walls, fears, that we must now go in and address those issues with our higher self, talking to our lower self, to recognize that we're emerging from kind of animal unaware beginnings, and that as we become aware of those things and we begin to look at those things and address those things that we didn't want to before because of shame and fear, that we heal, and that changes our life, and that we emerge back from that as new beings, that we've been like reborn. And that is what they're teaching, and that's the template. And they say, here, go teach this. And let's take ourselves back there. Let's become Babylonians. And we are the philosophers of their time, and we know that template. We've been given that. We don't know the source, obviously before us. But we have it, and we know it works, and we know it's going to help people in the population. But we also know that the population is growing, it's burgeoning and getting bigger. We're building, our big ziggurat temples and things like that. And as we get along, we're working a story up for our population that fits in their time. And think Roman or Greek mythology. Think of Disney movies with gods and things like that. Think that this is a time back then where they're telling stories, and this is the nature of their media, that these are the kind of stories. Not what we know today, but this is what is in their culture. So this is the nature and the flavor of what they're working with, these kind of gods and different things. And the gods do have value. They have got different, we'll get into it. So we make the story and we tell people, when you were born, you were, at first you were the waters that were undivided, which represents us as our beginning self before we're aware, before we're self-aware. Those 3, 4, 5 years, our early self, our waters are not yet divided. It's not about the universe. It's about us. Every bit of this plays out in the psyche starting right there. There will be an above world or an outer world and a lower world or an inner world componentry to the stories. And in this case, that's what happens in the beginning when the waters are there. When you're born, first you're nothing, and you have the potential to become anything. But as we get to that point where we are now becoming self-aware, our consciousness is developing, our awareness, we are now able to, we know what the world is. Oh, I know what those things are. I know how to interface. I'm beginning to learn how to judge experiences, and I'm taking those experiences and the emotional state of my experiences, and I'm putting them away, and that is forming who and what I am, and I am emerging from those experiences. So I have the potential to become anything. A human can be, where are you born? What's your family like? From there it starts. The stories all begin at that point. Then they go off into the separation of male and female, or in this case it does. There's various things that they're not all that way, but there is some sort of a hierarchical separation there. And in this case, the higher God or male or creation, whatever it is in charge of, is of the lower one. The lower one picks up characteristics along the way that need to be cleared out. We're creating stories of how to go do that, go combat that issue, that your subconscious parts are now acting out. This is the part of your life where you're not in charge. You haven't woken up yet. And then we go along and create somebody that is the hero of the story, which is actually your higher self, which goes in and takes over and says, I am now aware of what has happened in my life. I'm going to go back and fix all of the things and rethink all of the stuff that I thought wrong about before. I'm going to straighten all that stuff out, which is going to change the way I feel about it, which is going to change my life, which puts me now in charge of life. And that's the story. And then you're told the story isn't big enough. They say, no, make it bigger, but don't change the template. Don't change anything. Make it really rich and big, but leave that template completely intact. Don't add to it. Don't take away from it. Wow, how do we make that story bigger? So what we do is we realize that all of those components along the way are always there, but along the way they change. We morph. We move from one state of being to another. We go from an unaware self to an aware self, to a self that is not in charge. That we have parts of us that because of experiences, they act out. This one is shame because of that experience. This one's hatred because of that judgment. This one is fear because of that. This one is some kind of experience because I feel horrible about myself. These all become different creatures. They all become different things that act out. We just give them different names. And we are going to name our different, the different parts of us, which is give us a different name at different stages of our development along the way in our life. The person that we start out at as the consciousness is the exact same person we end up with in the end. The difference is we've gone from our unaware self to our aware self, and they've named us different names along the way, thus keeping everything intact while making the story much bigger, more fun to pick apart, but containing all of the elements without adding something that doesn't belong there. This is a small book, so if you read ahead of my interpretations, you will see that there's another component, I don't recall the name right now, that is going in and trying to deal with the past and comes back unsuccessful all the time. That's the part of all of us that in the beginning is trying to go and take care of things, but they're not succeeding before the hero is made. You're kind of making a weak effort to go back and make changes, but you haven't quite figured it out yet. That is represented in the story. In the first video, we talked about how to hook ourselves into the story and become, where this Tiamat became our subconscious, where we could see that part that is what is beginning to collect the things that are our life experiences. So we know that Tiamat is there, and that Tiamat is going to be what is containing the elements of us that is acting out. And we're going to see that beginning to emerge in this story. So right there, what I like to do is I read through these and they seem confusing. I find parts like that I realize that's where I fit the template. That's where me and the template align. I am finding myself exactly how the story relates to me at that point, where I'm finding parts that are very recognizable. There's another point, if you read ahead, where you can hook into. What we're going to see near the end of the story, after the battling is all done, is that Tiamat is now the barge and Marduk is the driver of the barge, which is going to signify that same thing. We can hook into there. That is our subconscious that is now containing everything. It's the barge. It's the vessel that is containing everything, but it is no longer containing things that are acting out. Now our new self, Marduk, is driving the boat. Look at those parts, and from there we grow it out. They're not changing anything. They're adding, I would say, superfluous details, but you see that they are rich, valuable story details in a culture that tells stories. Yeah. So I think that's the best way to look at this. But now we shift back in their time and we're using these weird, these gods, these analogs, these things that they have, the creatures, the things that they've got going on. We're going to see that those elements fit in the psyche up here. There's more of them, but they just represent different points in time in our life when we were aware, not aware, hurt, not hurt, good parts, bad parts, aware parts, fighting parts, parts that are failing. All of those are in this story. All of them, I'm going to suggest. Yeah, and we'll see them. What I want to say is I've become very familiar with Joseph Campbell's template of the hero's journey, and I've honestly modified it a bit myself because I play it completely out in the psyche. He knew that happened there, but he kept it mystical. I've locked it into, interactive human components. they're not mystical anymore when I'm done. After fully interpreting them, what they emerge as is just interactive steps for self-healing, honestly. It is all a psychological, I heal myself and that changes my life, and here is how it works along the way. But one more thing that I was thinking of that I think will make this easier to look at is that if we take the Enuma Elish, we look at this and go, it's a creation myth. How do we categorize this? How do we look at it? Do we treat it as a creation myth? Do we treat it as, how do we treat it? And I'm going to say this, that we should treat it as a nested template, a healing template that is rich in analogs from their culture that play out in the psyche, for that self-healing template. However, it's written in a form that's like a huge comic book. Yeah, a huge comic book. Let's read it like that and watch what happens. Okay, as I move along, I want to go back to the last paragraph of the Tablet 1 and just catch up where we were. And I'll post a link below to the first videos. These are going to be sequential. This is not a good place to jump in if you haven't seen the first ones. She conveyed to him the tablet of fate, clasping it at his chest. What you say will not be altered, and you will speak the law. So after King U had received his rank, been given Anu power, and had pronounced the fates of his sons the gods, he said, what comes out of your lips would obliterate flames. Your potent poison would serve to incapacitate the mighty. Okay, if you were here in the first one, what we have come to so far on this one is that the tablet of fate that is clasping at his chest is a very specific thing. The tablet of fate is the collection of things that we have that cause us to act out our lives when we're not in charge. Period. That's it. Here is how and what you are in your sleeping state, and this is what comes out of you. King U represents that part of our life. That is us. We are King U when we are the person that is holding on to acting out. It's just our early self. King U is before we begin to arrive. We've been given Anu power. Anu is the original source. So we now have power over what is going on. We've pronounced the fates of our sons, the gods. The gods are going to be in control. The fates are what they're going to do to act out. Pain, shame, hurt, what triggers you. That is what is going to be the fate of the sons and the gods. The reason they are gods is because they will act out. That's why they're raucous too, and that they need to be destroyed. But they're called gods because they will have control over you at that time, at that stage in your life. They will take over, and there's nothing you can do to stop them. The story goes on. What comes out of your lips would obliterate flames. Your potent poison would serve to incapacitate the mighty. Yeah, how bad do we act out when those things do come out? When King U is in charge back then, and the sons are acting out, we start obliterating flames and incapacitating the mighty with our anger. Okay, now we know where we are. Let's start right on Tablet 2. Tiamat then called together the legions of her demon army, assigning divisions to wage war against her sons, the gods. Tiamat caused more harm for future generations than Apsu. I'm going to stop right here and say, I can't unravel that one right there. Tiamat called together the legions of her demon army. It sounds like she's gathering up all of the bad characteristics inside. But then assigning divisions, sectioning them up to wage war against her sons, the gods. Isn't the demon army her sons the gods? Yeah, I'm not sure. Legion army assigning divisions to wage war against her sons. This one doesn't quite sound right. I don't have it figured out. So let's move on to the next part. I'll just leave it right there. I just at these points I go, come back to it. Move on. Let's see if we can find where we fit again. It was related to Ea that she was making war preparations, and Ea took heed of that communication upon receiving it. But he was left speechless and sat without uttering a word. Now, I believe what is emerging here is that Ea coexists with King U, that they are both our consciousness at that time, that King U is the one that when we get triggered is the one in charge, and when we're not triggered and we're not connected with life and we're living life without being triggered and without being controlled by our inner self, then we are Ea. We have that split part going on, that part of us that's, I'm happy, life is good. Then we get triggered and something happens later and you're like, oh my God, why did I do that? We're switching back and forth between those two right there. They both belong. So Ea right now took heed of that communication upon receiving it. He was left speechless without uttering a word, considered it at length, however, his ire subsided. Don't know why that is. Oh, I know. Wait a minute. Because when that happens, we get angry. We eventually get over it before it happens again. So we're going through this emotional cycle. Our anger is going to rise, then we're going to be okay. Then it's going to come up again. Yeah, we see a cycle kind of here maybe. He went to Anshar, stood before the one who fathered him, and repeated to him everything relating to Tiamat's plans. O Father, Tiamat, who gave all birth, is set on destroying us. She called together a congress and is like a deranged maniac. So that's very colorful verbiage. Remember cartoon kind of stuff right here. What we have is people saying, you know what, yes, my father, we are in trouble. You know, he's having counsel with his former self or something like that. Remembering that what they're talking about here is building a story that this part of us is this lunatic kind of an individual. We know that. So let's move along with a story and see where it gets to. And the gods have all gone over to her side, every one of them. Even those which you gave rise to have also joined her force. They have gathered around Tiamat and championed her cause. They were brutal and planned endlessly both day and night. Grumbling and fumbling, all done in the cause of making war. They called together a council of war to consider battle plans. Lady Huber, who made all, produced an unfailing weapon. She brought big snakes with piercing teeth and vicious fangs. Their bodies she had infused with poison rather than blood, and she caused these raging demons to emit deadly beams and wear mantles of brilliance so that they were like gods. Then the Lady Huber raised her voice, verbalizing the curse. Before we go on to do that, let's cover this right here. So what we have, she called together a Congress. It's like a deranged man. Yeah, that's where we ended up with. They're talking about. So here's the conscious starting to look at the life, saying, we got some issues here. This is coming out. All of the gods, everything has gone over there. I have no control over this part of my life. This says that even the gods that you created have gone over to her side. So what would that be? This would be things in our earlier life. We create good things, we create bad things. But at some point, the bad things take over anyway. The good things that you've created don't even stand up anymore. It doesn't matter in the midst of the bad things. And as I move along, this kind of sounds like it might fit with that earlier comment about Tiamat made or caused things to be worse. As life goes on, things are bad to begin with, but somehow as we don't deal with things, they continually compound until they get incredibly out of control. Lady Huber is a part of, I don't know where that female comes from. It emerges somewhere strange, but there's a part of this that is just creating the idea, I believe, that there is this evil that is going to be acting out when it happens. We know what that is. When we act out and we're punching holes in walls, screaming, yelling, hitting, that is it right there. That is it. Whatever they're producing right here, the big snakes with piercing teeth, the vicious fangs infused with poison, that's it right there. These play out in our life. This is our story, each one of us. These elements right here are emerging from us, and they're simply analogs carrying the idea that we got some wicked stuff that comes out when that happens. Okay, continuing along the tablet, Lady Huber had just raised her voice, verbalizing the curse after calling these into being, and here it is. Anyone who gazes at them will be stricken down with horror. They will always raise up their bodies and never back down. Then Tiamat enlisted a horned snake, a Mashusu dragon, a Lamu hero, an Ugalu devil, a mad dog, a scorpion man, brutal Umu devils, a half-man, half-fish, a half-man, half-bull, carrying ruthless weaponry and who reveal no fear in battle. Her commands were so portentous that none could be ignored, and in addition to these, she recruited 11 more likewise, and above all of her children, of the gods who had assembled, she conferred upon Kingu, the chief rank amongst them all, bestowing the generalship of her army and rule of the Congress, to hold aloft the spear to signify battle and gather the warriors. She had given him high command of the entire combat force. Alrighty, so the threats, if you face these issues that come out. They're ugly, they're bad, they have no fear in battle. What's going to happen when you blow up like that? We will be totally unreasonable, incredibly unreasonable. You will accept stupid things because we're so angry. Yeah, we're not going to. We reveal no fear in battle. No could be ignored. There's something here that's different. In addition, she recruited 11 more likewise. That comes up somewhere. I don't know what 11 more comes from. That's an interesting analog right there. I also want to talk about the creatures that they invoked here. The horned snake, a Mashusu dragon, a Lamu hero, an Ugalu devil, a mad dog, things like that. That those are probably not just random things. That these are much deeper. And this goes into a realm where I haven't delved and I simply don't have time. But if somebody were to look at those, or if there's something from their culture, that probably each of these represents something that is more than just a boogeyman. You know, that they're all specific. That one of them may represent anger. One might represent violence. One might represent shame. Those sorts of things. That there's layering in here. There's more layering in here. And above all of her children, of all the gods who had assembled, she conferred with King U. So there you go. That is the chief of you who was acting out at the time. You're in charge. You're the generalship. Hold aloft the signal battle and gather the warriors. She had given him high command of the entire combat force. Boom. He's acting out, and there's nothing anybody can do. She gave him command. It's busting out. It's busting out. All right. Tiamat had just given King U the charge of the entire combat force to hold aloft the spear to signify battle and gather the warriors. She had given him high command of the entire combat force and placed him to be seated upon the throne of rule, saying, I have conjured a spell in your name, making you foremost among the gods of Congress. You now rule all of the gods. You will reign supreme. For further, you will be my soulmate. Your orders shall not be disregarded among the Anuki. She conveyed to him the tablet of fate, clasping it at his chest. What you say will not be altered, and you will speak the law. So after King U had received his rank, been given Anu power, and had pronounced the fates of his sons the gods, he said, what comes out of your lips would obliterate flames. Your potent poison would serve to incapacitate the mighty. Okay, right here we're seeing some repetition already starting. The cyclical things are coming into play. Yes, he's in charge. We're getting that idea again. Remembering this story is coming to us. We've made this story. Now let's become who the story is for. The little shepherd boys, the little kids that are making pottery or doing things like that for a living so that we can, food, water, clothing, simple life. These stories are for us. We don't read, we don't write, there's no libraries. We're telling stories. We don't want them over in 5 minutes. We don't. And we want to learn something, and we want to see patterns in here. And that's what they're doing. They're putting patterns in here so we could see repetitive nature of some kind of failing that's happening. And when we play it out inside of here, we see exactly where it goes. There are some different things in here. Your orders shall not be disregarded among the Anuki. I don't know where that's going to go. It's going to go to Anunnaki, and it's going to spread out to other places from there. There's more layers in here. She conveyed to him the tablet of fate, clasping it to his chest. So we're seeing again that here we are. You're in charge. However, we're seeing something else. Your orders shall not be disregarded among the Anuki. So somewhere that's a new element that's come into play in this one right here, isn't it? Everything else is the same. Okay, let's move on to the next one here. And what I'm going to suggest is try to, as you're reading this, try to see if you can start playing it out in your mind as you read it. Anu continued on, keeping a lookout for Tiamat's battle lines. Remembering Anu is a different part of us. We are not the hurt part. We are the conscious part that is coexisting with our earlier self that doesn't have a handle on things. Anu continued on, keeping a lookout for Tiamat's battle lines, but he did not make his voice heard, and instead returned. He went before Anshar, the king, and humbly beseeched him. Father, the ways of Tiamat are far too potent for me to handle. I went in search of her route, but my spell was inferior to hers. She holds powers that are alarming, and she is utterly horrific. The forces about her are supreme. None could stand against her. Her great din never subsides, being too much for me to take. Her voice struck me with terror, so much so that I headed back. Yet do not refrain, Father. Rather dispatch another against her. No matter how strong a woman, she still cannot equal a man. Okay, before moving on, let's cover this one right here. Do you see what's happening in here? This is our self that is not able to manage our early self. And despite going in and trying to figure it out, my spell is inferior to hers. Act out. I'm sorry, I quit. I won't do that again. I don't know why I do that. That's not going to work. That's an inferior spell. It's going to come out anyway. She holds powers that are alarming, and she is utterly horrific. When that stuff triggers out, yeah. The forces about her supreme. The great din never subsides. The raucous minds. Her voice struck me with terror. Headed back, but he's asking, can you please dispatch somebody else? No matter how strong a woman, she cannot equal a man. This is not man and woman. This is conscious, subconscious. This is who's in charge versus who gets told what to do, and then based on what you've told them to do, it acts out. This is still, the conscious is still in charge. The man is still stronger than the woman. The conscious thinking is still stronger than the characteristics that we have put in there. But we have to go interact with them. We have to create another. We have to dispatch another. Okay, let's move on. No matter how strong a woman, she still cannot equal a man. Remember, that means no matter how strong the characteristics you hold inside of you, they can still be managed by your conscious thinking, thereby dispersing her legions and confounding her orders. This you must do before she overwhelms us with powers. Anshar could not find words, but cast his eyes onto the floor. He ground his teeth and could give no encouragement to Ea, so that all the Ijiji gathered together, and all of the Anuki. For a time they sat without speaking, lips closed, then spoke. Will not any god step forward, or is our fate predetermined? Will not anyone go to confront Tiamat with force of arms? Then, from his secluded abode, Ea sent forth a declaration. All right, before moving on, dispersing her legions, confounding her orders. Yeah, what they're doing here is working up this idea that we need to go take care of this. I'm addressing another part of myself, Anshar. Anshar is, I don't know, another layer in there. But this is something that's a part of us. We're conferring with ourselves, trying to figure out what to do. Oh my God, what do I do with myself? I don't know. I'm not quite sure how to manage my life. We're at a turnaround point right here, but we don't know what to do. I don't know what the Ijiji are or the Anuki. Again, layers in here. But what we see going on in the larger picture is that this is us beginning to confer with ourselves, saying, how are we going to manage our lives? This crap keeps coming out, and I'm getting tired of it. We need to figure out how to manage it. And they're building it into a fun story. Remember that. Will not any god step forward? Is our fate predetermined? Is anybody going to resolve what is happening inside of me, or do I have to live with it forever? Will not anyone go to confront Tiamat with force of arms? That dark right there means that with the tablet was broken there. It was missing. They assumed that. And then it says, then from his secluded abode, Ea sent forth a declaration. Remember, Ea's been here before, and we have a secluded abode right there. This is happening inside of us. That means that Ea is a part of us that is somehow secluded from what's going on. Keep that in mind. Moving on. To the faultless one of Anshar, father of the mighty gods, him with the true heart, like a fellow citizen or countryman, that formidable heir who was destined to defend his father, who strikes fearlessly into the fray, Marduk, the champion. And he related to him the plans he had formulated, saying, Marduk, heed my counsel, give ear to your father's words. I'm going to stop right here. Let's go back and review who Marduk is real quick. This was on Tablet 1. And I'm not going to go into it in a lot of detail. You can go back and look at that video, but just here as a refresher here, there within the watery Apsu did Marduk take his shape. The Apsu is where everything originated to begin with. In the Apsu is the source of all, the energy, whatever, that everything comes from this. We come from this. Life comes from this. That is the Apsu. There within the watery Apsu did Marduk take shape. Within the unsullied waters of the Apsu was Marduk born. And remember, those are analogs. There's not really water here. It's just something is emerging from whatever. We're creating from something that isn't there. We're making something that is there. From his father Ea did Damkina give birth to him. He suckled on the milk of the goddess's own breast, and she who breastfed him embodied him with excellence, so that he had a lofty stature. The look of his eyes was intense, mature from the very first, and mighty even at a young age. When his grandfather Anu looked upon him, he was glad. His face shone greatly, his heart was exceedingly pleased. So perfect that his head was twice as lofty as any other god. Rising high above them, he was the better by every measure. Both his arms and legs were well formed beyond comparison, so that it could not be fathomed, almost incomprehensible. Moreover, he possessed 4 ears to hear and 4 eyes to see, and red flames leapt forth whenever he opened his mouth. His 4 ears were also considerable, of voluminous size, as were his eyes, which were capable of perceiving anything. Being unsurpassed among the gods of exceptional build, having limbs which were mighty, and a body terrifically tall. Then Anu cried, "Mariutu, my son, you are king of the gods." So you even see right there, it went from Marduk to Mariutu, my son, you are king of the gods. So there's various names still being brought into here. This is the creation, though, of the person that is going to be the hero. This is the part of us. There's more to it than that. I hate to say it. This is actually a little tighter than that. This path is not for everybody. It's for people who have a larger, expansive awareness. People who can see somehow, somewhere, there's something different about some people that can do this. And that's what this is designating here as far as the big eyes, the big ears. There's somebody that has, there are some people who have a larger spatial awareness, a larger scope of things, a global look. And that is the kind of person that's going to go on this path. So not only do we need to create this character, but also there are certain people that are going to be this character. And there are other people that will never be this character. Why? I don't know why. But the material, as you go through it, will continue to reveal that. This is precursor to everything else. So it's not quite structured as tight as a Greek myth or something like that. But it contains everything. All right, I editorialized a little bit on that. That actually doesn't come from the material, this one block right here. It comes from a larger, seeing a lot more things across the board. That this few people are called, or many called, few chosen. Not many are going to go. There's always a selection process on the path. Right off the bat, we are told that not many people are going to do this. It doesn't really emerge right here, but across the board, it emerges. So I just wanted to throw that in. I think it's bigger than just you have to have an expansive awareness. I think it's if you have an expansive awareness, then you have the potential to do this. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that if you're still viewing at this point, you are either a bored academic or you are becoming Marduk. Okay. Then he kissed him upon the lips and put aside his fears. And Marduk raised his voice to be heard, saying to Anshar. Remember, Anshar was one of, it's like about the second or third creation in the lineage from the beginning. We'll have to get back to it. We can go through this a bunch of times to figure it out, probably. So Marduk is offspring of Anshar. This is a previous self. This is a self. Anshar is a self early on before we got hurt. That is who wants Marduk. Our earlier self, before we got hurt, wants Anshar. Anshar wants Marduk to take over. Father, you must not remain silent, but rather speak to me and permit me to go. Let me do that which you wish me to do. Anshar, you must not remain silent, but rather speak to me and permit me to go. Let me do that which you wish me to do. And Anshar raised his voice to be heard, saying to Marduk, What sort of man would be willing to send you off to this war? Son, this is Tiamat, a female, and it is she who will attack you. And Marduk raised his voice to be heard, saying to Anshar, O father, you brought me to life. Be glad and of good cheer, for soon your foot will be resting upon the very neck of Tiamat. O Anshar, who brought me to life, be glad and of good cheer. Okay, I do want to point out there was that doubling of lines in the middle, or right in the beginning there. The Father, you must not remain silent, but rather speak to me and permit me to go. Let me do that which you wish me to do. Anshar, you must not remain silent, but rather speak to me and permit me to go. Let me do that which you wish me to do. So there were two lines that were almost identical, except one of them started with Father, and the next one started with Anshar. Those are going to mean something. I don't know what, but if the translation made it from... provided somebody was translating for us and keeping it very tight, things like this are there for a reason. They're there to get our attention. Layers. There's more to it. And the best thing to do at this point would be to know what the name Anshar actually meant to them back then. But I don't think we need to worry about that. We continue on, and basically what we have is just a story of we know that what we're doing is trying to develop a higher self, or that our higher self is working with our conscious self to try to develop the skill sets and the tools necessary to go in and start examining the issues that we have inside. That's ultimately what is being carried in here. However, this is, it's letting us know that you don't have to go after it. The female, it is who will attack you. Yeah, what do you go resolve? When it emerges, it emerges. It's going to attack you. It will. That's what happens when you get triggered. Right? That's the God acting out. That's, in this case, they're using the analog of Tiamat, the female, who will attack you, which sounds difficult, doesn't it? We have to unwrap our brains from what we think. Oh, Father, you brought me to life. Yeah, we're creating this. Soon your foot will be, yea, send me, we're going to be victorious. Let's move on to the next panel. Then Anshar raised his voice to be heard, speaking to Marduk. Go then, son, with my blessings, with all your superior wisdom, and cut Tiamat down to size with your perfect incantations. Go on your way at once, within the chariot of the storm clouds, so that her men cannot advance, but rather make them retreat. And he was gladdened, and spoke to his grandfather, saying, Ruler of the gods, deviser of the destinies of the high gods, if I am to be your defender and defeat Tiamat to preserve you, then assemble a commission and proclaim a singular destiny, and rest content among the others within Ubshu Ukanaku, for my own words rather than yours will determine destiny. Whatever I accomplish will not be undone, never overturned, and the verdict that issues from my lips never be rescinded. Okay, I want to do one smarty pants thing here for a second. Do you remember back here, it's her men right there? So that her men, that was a part of the tablet that was damaged, and they had to decide what might go in there. And the choice was to put her men, whoever did this translation, thinking, well, instead of leaving that blank, I'm going to assume this. But here's something that we know in interpreting the material, that in the beginning, gods are created. The gods are the ones that are acting out, you don't have control over. Later on, when we see that all of that stuff is wiped out, humans are going to be created. Humans are subservient. Humans are the parts of us that are subservient to us. Now, that's what's going to happen. So this should have said so that her gods cannot advance, not so that her men cannot advance. Do you see that one? Okay, done with that. Okay, if we go back and look at it again, it says, go then, son, with my blessings, with all of your superior wisdom. So it's going to take wisdom. Cut down with perfect incantations. Okay, so we're going to have to do some sort of interacting with what is there. Go on your way at once within the chariot of the storm clouds. Storm clouds are going to emerge as something that, we'll see. Well, let's let that grow. We'll grow with that one. So that she cannot advance, but rather make them retreat, making all of that stuff go back. You go after what's there and make it go away. Okay, let's go back and do this part then. The ruler of the gods, divisor of the destinies of the high gods. These are high gods. So there is a ruler of gods. Yes, if I'm to be your defender and defeat Tiamat to preserve you. So you, ruler of the gods, destiny of the high gods, this is who you are before all of those parts took over you. You want to get all of those parts, the gods, out of Tiamat. Defend and defeat Tiamat to preserve your true self. So picture this. This aspect of us is who we were before we became hurt. Enter into the kingdom of heaven as a child. Then assemble a commission and proclaim a singular destiny. A singular destiny. What is the one thing we seek? Happiness. And rest content among the others within Ubshu Ukanaku. Council chambers. Let me show you what the council chambers are. Remember, these are all mental constructs. This is going to fit actually a lot of categories, so there'll be a lot of different analogs for this as well. Here I am not using the council chambers. Oh, I'm acting out, and I'm not going to deal with it. Ever. It's everybody else's problem. That's the problem. I'm not using the council chambers. There's a point where you sit down and go, what am I doing? What's my problem? Well, your problem is you got hurt. You're not dealing with it. Oh, no, what should I do? You are now in council chambers. All of the things we're doing in our mind to resolve our issues or to work through things, that's our council chambers, or the temple, or the wedding chamber. There's going to be a lot of analogs that designate this place where our conscious and our subconscious need to be recombined, male and female portions of us. And it'll come through a variety of ways here. Council chambers are going to be used for the good guys, and then there's something else for, the bad ones. It's still the same mental place, but who's using it? When you're sitting there using your mind to scheme and connive, it's one kind of a chamber. When you're using it to have counsel for healing, it's a different name. Yeah. God, how beautiful is that? These guys were master storytellers. It gives me chills to see what they're doing. You analyze it. Anyway, structure. Look for the patterns. I was thinking of something that would be a fun exercise, but I don't want to mess with it. And that would be to go take all of the names, like whatever is the beginning name that sounds very unfamiliar to us, and just rename it source. And then go everywhere that reappears and call it source. Tiamat, subconscious. Start naming all of those things differently in there, and then go through and read it again without the names being unfamiliar. I think that something will emerge that will be easier to see, because it's not so far away from what our mental structure is already familiar with in language. And that's all this is language, shifting around stuff, learning what they're doing, and understanding that it fits on that template, on that self-healing template. I think I've covered everything on this one, Tablet 2, that I wanted to. Hope it was interesting and fun. It was for me. Every time I go through this stuff, I learn things. I'm gonna go through things that today I was like, I'm not sure. And then in the next couple of days, I'll look back and go, oh, I know what that is. It works like that. It's amazing. Anyway, but I'm going to keep moving along because I want to get from here to other myth, working up to Genesis and showing how this is there. Yeah, exactly. Christianity too. All right, next video will be on Tablet 3. And until then, love one another. I'll see you then.